Good morning to you. My name is Joy Esser. I'm Manager of Dealer Development for Finance in our new department in Raleigh, about a year or two old at the present time. But our purpose in life with the Dealer Development Department is to work hand in hand with you dealers to help you step into the next millennium, you might say, with better management all the way around. We've been at this for a while. We're doing some seminars in that respect. But we've also got some region analysts that are helping us to work with you on a one-on-one basis to grow that business. We're doing that through a couple different ways. Right now, during the winter months, we're conducting a bunch of seminars. The one you see at the top of the page is for the dealer principals. In that case, we spend 3 days going through basically all the financial ratios and so forth that a dealer today and tomorrow needs to analyze and keep track of. Kind of like the gauges in the cockpit in that plane that you probably rode here in, right? If you looked into the cockpit and you saw all the gauges broken out, would you crawl on the plane? I think I'd have a second choice. So they rely on those, and you and your business have to do the same thing because you're flying about the same amount of cash if you want to look at it in a different respect. We also get into parts management seminar Friday and Saturday of this week prior to the Expo. Some of you attended 2-day seminar over at the Hilton. Tomorrow and the next day after that, I'm conducting a management for service managers in the same area. And we've got some things started with all these department heads, and we're speaking the same gospel, if you want to call it that, about how we have to be better managers in our business tomorrow. We talk also in the area of a total market development. That's a 2-day seminar set up for salesmen, not sales manager, salesmen. How do I manage my time better? How do I close sales? But most importantly, how do I totally develop the market that I have? My backyard, so to speak. I got to know what's under every rock, what the potential is. By the end of the session, in February, we've got a class, a reunion, you might call it, for some of those that have gone to it. Some of you in here are signed up for it, I see. And that is a class that was requested by the dealers where we get together a year down the road and analyze our progress, our problems, etc., kind of like 201 instead of 101. And we're going to continue that type of thing as we go on. We've got about 500 attendees, dealer principals, that have signed and or have gone through these sessions thus far, and we're going to continue to grow that. We also have, as I mentioned, 3 region analysts that are here to work on you with a one-on-one basis. And that's not the analyst fee that you see with somebody from the outside that comes in and tries to tell you how to run their business when they're not in the business. So we're proud of that, but not from the numbers standpoint. I'm simply interested in getting a better profit out the back door, or to the bank, let's say, in this business. So to start off with, I'm asking you a question. Does this trend of financial profits look like yours? Not necessarily maybe for your total store. Maybe it's up in some areas, down in others. I think that all of you would agree in the last couple of years the sales have continued to grow. But the question is, have the profits kept growing along with it? Not in all cases. So what we need to look at is some of the things that have happened in the past. And if you yourselves that have been in business for the last 20 years, you probably realize also that what I've done is to try and gather all the different lines that I could so that I could be the one-stop shop for anybody in my trade area that could possibly need anything that I've got on the shelf. The problem with that is that we end up with a small amount of cash over in the bottom, and we're running ourselves rampant trying to get it done. It's not a merry-go-round anymore of trying to catch the brass ring. It's a situation of using a seat belt and a shoulder harness to keep us in what has turned into be a centrifuge. Right? In that case, with all the different vendors that we've got, and when I put this program together, I was thinking in the line of 2 to 10 vendors by store. Until I got in the parts seminar the other day, and one of the men in there said, you know something, I deal with 200 vendors per year. And the other day I talked to a man that does 400 vendors per year. Now maybe he doesn't buy much or only one piece from a given vendor. But stop and think about it. 200 is either 200 invoices and or 200 payments, or keeping track of that many different lines. You can't do that today. especially like some of you are with a computer system that doesn't lend to doing that. So we can't survive in that type of a market anymore in the next millennium. The class objectives that I want to try and accomplish for you today is to take a look at the new business model. Now, I'm not going to open these curtains back here because you see all my junk. I don't have a model set up all under glass, like pheasant under glass, you might say. But what we're going to look at is some of the things maybe we need to do with our current operation to overhaul it, put a new face on, you might say, and make it a worthy vehicle for the next millennium. We need to also determine the most profitable vendor line that we have in our business. Which one is really giving us that profit? I'm not telling you it's Deere. I'm going to suggest to you very strongly throughout that you go home and you make this analysis, because the one that's giving you the profit today has got to be that member in your choir that's singing, not just holding a chair. And I'll also go a step further and tell you if that's not the green line, maybe it needs to go. I don't think so, but you need to make that decision, because don't hold on to something that's costing you money or is not in your best interest. The third thing you need to do is to commit to that vendor that you choose. Commit totally as to how you're going to market it, etc. And my wife has a little magnet on the refrigerator door, and it says, rule number 1, Mom is always right. Rule number 2, if Mom is wrong, see rule number 1. So if this doesn't happen the first time, go through the steps 1, 2, 3 as we go through it. A couple years ago, I was part of a team that put together some training in an expo like this in San Antonio. And one of the little things that we did was we found, kind of hard to find, we found some 1-foot square pieces of paper. And we took the 1-foot square piece of paper and said, what is my return on investment in this, on this square foot? And we gave it to each dealer as they left and said, go home and throw this in the door when you unlock it in the morning. Put it on the wall for the wall display, or on the gondola, or wherever, out on the front lawn. Because stop and think about it for a second. You have an investment in that square foot. I don't know what it is. Property in your place might be $50 a square foot. Might be $3. But you're asking the question, what is my return on investment on that square foot in my facility? What moves from that foot? What makes money in that foot? So return on investment is your major business metric that you go by. I know darn good and well your wife nags on you if your reinvestment in the stock market doesn't pay off. Mine does. You know, you made the wrong decision again. So return on investment is very powerful in our day-to-day business, and it has to be more so as we go on. But I'm asking you the question, if you determine that, if you invest poorly, the resources that you have, if you invest poorly in that future, don't expect much. Don't expect much at all. If you spread what investment you have too thin across too many vendor lines, the 200, the 10, the 15, whatever, don't expect much again. You're going to stay in the same rut maybe some of us are today. I guarantee you, if you concentrate your efforts, you can expect a lot. 1991, I had double bypass heart surgery. I didn't go to a general practitioner to have that job done. I went to somebody who focused on it. I'm happy I did. I'm still here. I hope you won't regret that when we're through. By committing the resources and the people and the product, you can expect return on investment. That I can guarantee you. But it takes determination and, like Nike says, just do it. We've got to do it. So it can be achieved. Now, as Regis Philburn says, who would like to be a millionaire? Well, we all would. That's a dream, maybe. But it can be a reality also. But how do we do that? The final answer is up to you, right? So I'm going to suggest to you that throughout this process this morning, that you think about, what do I need to measure at home when I get there? And I want you to make up somewhat of a score sheet like this. Maybe you've got 16 columns, maybe 4. I don't know which. That's your decision. But you've got to judge every vendor that you carry to make sure that you're giving the same analysis to each one of them. Because I've visited many dealers that are not making money on a vendor line that they thought they were making money on, and it's really draining the cash drawer as we go along day by day. As far as the new business model, again, not opening the curtain, and it's not something that you have to go home and tear down it all and start over. It's some major things in your business that have to be looked at. The first one, complete an appropriate line to fully represent. Don't sit there anymore and say, I'm a cherry picker, I like this item and I don't like that, I like this one and I don't like that. The vendor that you choose is the most profitable. Focus on it and take the entire line and run with it. We need sophisticated computer management systems. Many of the dealers I work with say, I can't afford the computer I need. Or I paid $70,000 for this computer. And yet they haven't spent the $2,000 or $3,000 for the week of detailed training, demand that training, to make that thing run. I know a couple of dealers that spend $70,000 and he says, you know, after I listen to you talk, I realize I'm getting about 5 to 10% utilization of that computer. That's wasted time too, right? So we got to go that to get the departmentalization that we need so we can manage and measure what we're managing in there, or manage from measurement. We need higher quality management personnel. Again, you might say, I can't afford the person. Keep that question in mind, because I'm going to show you some things that I think in your home store, you've got some money laying around that maybe you didn't think about. Getting those personnel and getting it to the point where I refuse to accept mediocrity. Get your job descriptions in line so that they all mesh together like the gears in a transmission and come to be the total package for your store. Everybody's working together. Managing training in parts, sales, and service. That's the first slide I showed you. We as an industry have been very lax in doing good training. Some of you brace your feet about coming to a 3-day seminar. Oh, I've been to that type of stuff before and it doesn't do me any good. The investment is there. It's not a flavor of the month type thing that we're working on. We've got that one fairly well covered. At least it's on the road. Upgrading to modern facilities. I'm not talking about a big Taj Mahal. I've seen some dealers that have built themselves out of business. They've taken on the load of the finance plan that they couldn't afford to, never could hope to sell in that area. I'm talking about making your facilities useful from the standpoint that I don't try to set up a 48-inch mower in a 38-inch room, a shop. You see what I'm talking about? We have to be professional and be able to provide that full service to our customer. Developing an annual business and marketing plan. Where are we headed? If you're interviewing people, for example, today, Dick over here is interviewing people for his Ready to Mow program. We're working with him to help develop the job descriptions. Why? We need to have a map. Which direction are we going? That's part of a business plan and a marketing plan. Improve financial strength. Have any of you ever seen one of those PBS stores on firestorms? I can't picture that if you haven't seen it, but firestorms get to growing like down in California, and they just consume fuel and fuel and more fuel and more fuel. They create their own weather. They go their direction, right? You know what they burn in this business? Dollars. That growth that you're seeing out there is consuming dollars, and we have to be financially sound to be able to stand that growth or the downtrend if that happened to come along. Multi-locations. I'm not saying that the one single store is out of the picture in the future. I'm saying that if you look at history with the other industries like this, the consolidation or multi-stores, and I talk to dealers all the time that are buying another store or opening another store, consolidating, because what does it do? It takes the resources and puts them to better use than duplicating all of it as we go along. So when I've got that analysis to look at, how do I go about that? I saw one time when I was a young kid in the dentist office, and I hate dentists to this day because the old boy that I had didn't use Novocaine. But he had a plaque on his wall that I kind of copied this idea from, because it says, you know, if you don't have departmentalized accounting, you can't measure anything accurately. He was talking about if you didn't have good teeth, you couldn't chew and so on down the line. But it works here. I've got to have detailed accounting to be able to measure that. Do you know, for all the parts vendors that you've got on your shelves today, can you tell me to the penny how many freight dollars you have invested in each of those? I haven't seen anybody yet that's that close. But if you don't have that, it's like burying your bucket halfway in the sand. You just keep pouring money into it without pulling it out to see where the leaks are. I've got to know, and departmentalized accounting does that to help me measure that. If I can't measure it, I can't manage it. If you don't know where you're losing money, you can't start with a goal to improve it, can you? Pretty common sense. Nothing in the rocket science, anyhow. If I don't have effective management, I can't expect that profitability on any line and a true good return on investment. And without profit and return on investment, why invest? Why invest? In our seminars, throughout the ones that I discussed there for you, we used various different tools and financial analysis and so forth. And I've pulled some of those slides together and kind of taken the fast forward for you. So again, hold on and follow me through. These are figures that were put together as a composite of the dealers attending. Not Joy Esser's wish or something I copied out of Yard and Garden, etc. These are average figures put together from the dealers that were attending. The points I want you to remember, if necessary, write on the inside of your eyelids, right? Is that where some of you take notes? Kevin, do you take notes there? All right, gross margin in this case. If I look at John Deere products, I'm at 15.9, 12.2 on commercial, 15.5 on rental, 10.4 on other equipment sales. Not my figures. 10.4, but that's industry average if you look at all industry, not just Deere dealers. If I look at this other equipment, I don't do as good with my other lines as I do with the major one. 10.4 there, unforgivably 3.7 in the used equipment. We are not buying the used equipment right, period. We can go into that, but don't have the time here. The other point is 10% contribution margin. Contribution margin is the dollars you have left over after I've paid the variable expenses, the expenses that float up and down with sales. If I assume that that's the best I can do, contribution margin is how many dollars do I have left to pay the fixed expenses of this business. Fixed expenses, I call them the mother-in-law expenses. As long as you're married to this business, you're going to have one, right? The mortgage, the things that I can't adjust. I have to sell enough to make those. I'm at 10%. The bottom line, as you refer to it in some cases, 1.5% down here at the bottom. Terrible, but unfortunately pretty close to true. Industry is right now at about 1.74 average. There's some that are much better than that, and some are sitting in this room, I know. Go to the expense listing for this department, and you look at 10.3%. Now that doesn't take very much success in math to take 10.3. If I subtract that from the 10.4 I had before, the profit line is pretty thin. You have a hard time seeing through that, right? Pretty thin in that case. We also look at dealer equity. What is your unencumbered ownership in that, your investment in that business? And from that, what do I have to rely on as far as overcoming the sales growth requirements or taking advantage or surviving the downtrend? Do you realize that if you put investment into the business when you first started and you've got inventory out there on the line that is sitting there not moving, it's not turning, you've got dollars invested in that and it's sitting there and I can't pay light bill, I can't pay payroll, I can't pay bennies with that, right? Can't do it. Used equipment, the same thing. If I've got a number of lines and the flooring is different on this one, it's on that one, etc., and I start paying interest on them, I've got expense that I can't recover. I'll show you that in a minute. But one of the ways of keeping myself strong is looking at what's it costing me to floor all of these lines. Car dealers, as you may or may not know, they've only got about 15 free days of flooring. Then they have to find a home for the finance for it or turn it. But we floor equipment in this business a little bit longer than that. Return on that equity. You're saying, Joy, a guideline of 24 to 36% doesn't make sense. I could show you, if I could, can't, some financial statements of dealers that are doing that. But they're in this blue shape over here. Very well managed. They're getting that return on investment. So it is possible. This one here opens the eyes of many people when you're talking about the financial strength of a store. This is the debt service ratio In other words, how much income do I have to service the interest I'm paying on a vendor line or on anything that I'm paying interest on within the store? And that's the formula says if I take the pre-tax plus interest expense and divide it by interest expense, I want that to be a 3 times turn if possible. Here's an example. If I'm going to make it 3 times turn, I got $1,000, and I use this example because a dealer that I was talking to about a month ago, we were talking this very thing of interest expense on flooring of all his lines, and he had just written a check for $1,000 to one of the lines per month. The stuff isn't moving, he says. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, if you analyze in this case, and if you're going to keep a minimum of 3 times, look what he has to do of additional sales just to get back that $1,000 per month. Almost impossible, but at the 1.5 bottom line rate he's working on, I got to sell $133,000 of additional sales just to recover the check that I just sent off to that other supplier. We talk about inventory turn, what you spend on money to stock so you've got a display, etc. If you start dividing that amongst a bunch of lines, I've got investment in many directions. That inventory, regardless of color of the hood, needs to turn 2 to 3 times per year. Business case, regardless of color, 2 to 3 times. So this ratio could be John Deere or whatever vendor you're looking at in your operation. Let me show you the example there. The composite of these dealer statements said that there was cost of sales of $1.3 million, almost $1.4 million. Inventory, average inventory, not 1 month or the other month, average over the running 12 months was $677,000. That's an inventory turn of 2.03 times. And you might say, well, that's good, I'm within the guideline. You're barely within the guideline. You're barely on the boat, right? If I take an example of that and I boost my inventory turn by better management, watch what I order, etc., I've got an example here that says just a 0.47 times increase in management of my business, of my inventory line. I've got 127,000 average dollars per month that I don't have to be setting out there. That's in my pocket to spend where I need, not tied up in something that's not moving. Keep that in mind, if you will. That's 127. We talk about a break-even department, or break-even ratio for service, for sales expenses, I'm sorry. Remember I said before that there was 192,000 fixed expenses on that financial statement? If I look at that and say there's 192,000 and I had a 10% contribution margin, right? The dollars left over to pay fixed expense, I've got to sell $1.9 million before I start seeing the profit roll through the cash register. I'm still paying expenses at that point in time, at, anything below that. So if I could go out and improve my lot by just 1% on that vendor line, 1%. Look what I do to my less sales that I've got requires less sales down at the bottom. And if you want to look at the opposite direction, $175,000 ago I started making profit instead of waiting till I get to the $1.9 million as you see up at the top. I think that makes some sense also. Parts is another situation where we put a lot of money on the shelf because we spread ourselves out. If I've got 200 vendors, if I've got 15 vendors, I need to analyze what the profitability is of each one of those. Why invest, as I said, if we're not returning an investment on that investment, returning profit, I should say. So here the guideline is 3 to 4 times on a parts basis. If I look at the over-the-counter fill, which is another one of my 3-legged stools I talk about in the seminar, I got to have all these ratios in line to make myself profitable. I got the right part on the shelf. I know from history what I should be stocking for my area, period. I also then go and look at what my over-the-counter fill percentage is. In other words, out of every 100 customers that come in the door, 90 of them, I lay the part that they need on the table or on the counter then. That's the customer walking in the front door or your service customer coming in from the back door, right? So I'm looking here to have 90% efficiency on the stocked items that I stock in my store. Let me take you through that on an example. And I think I just pushed myself right past the third one. The third one is the stock order percentage. If you know what you need to stock, you know that's the right part to have, then the solution is, the smart thing anyhow, is to order it on a or a stock order basis. And I want to see 70% of my parts purchased. I know a lot of you have that, but the unfortunate part is in this division, about 50% of them today are still being ordered by machine down. That's not good. So if we look at this example, and I keep it in simple math, 100,000 is easy to deal with, up or down. You've all got a fraction of that up or beyond. But if I've got a 2 times turn on my inventory in my parts shelf, I've probably got $50,000 worth of dollars invested in that. If I move that same investment, same sales purchases here to 3 times turn, I've got less money by $17,000 invested in my inventory. Again, looking at it by vendor. My over-the-counter fill percentage simply says, in plain English, the right part at the right time at the right price, right? And with that, you've got happy customers. They keep coming back to your store because I know I can get my needs at that place, that location. If I look at it from a stock order standpoint, if I'm ordering only 50% of that, and I've got $50 on the bottom because my freight eats up the bonuses I'm picking up, if I move over to a 70% state on the way I purchase it, I'm picking up a couple thousand on the same amount of dollars purchased. Management, people, and choosing the vendor that gives you the right terms and the right discounts and so forth to make that happen. I've worked with a lot of dealers in my past, and everybody always thinks the more I have, the better off I am. I'm going back to that point, that first slide. Less may be more profitable to you because additional lines really add additional management. Think of it. How many vendors do you deal with? How many headaches do you have in that respect? The cost is increased. It does not automatically add to your bottom line by having more vendors on the shelves. And it doesn't necessarily increase your customer satisfaction because you're waiting for parts here or waiting in that direction, just a lot more headaches. Your service department. Unfortunately, people say in some cases, I can't make any money in the service. I'll challenge you to that. Show up for one of the seminars and we'll guarantee you no tuition if you can't take a couple ideas home that increase your efficiency out of that shop. Service billing efficiency is one of the measurements in that respect. If you buy 8 hours of labor from me when I walk in the morning, I'm your technician, you've bought that 8 hours. Now how do I sell it? How do I bill that out? How do I turn that into recoverable income? We want that guideline to be 80 to 90%. That sounds unreal for you because in too many cases today, we're not getting that with our dealers. We're getting far less than that. But when you've got those department needs in the service, you've got to have extra training for each of these major lines I carry. If you've got to have extra tools, extra lifts, extra textbooks, all these things to keep up, that gets that much more investment buried into that type of thing that I'm not contemplating on, or focusing on, I should say, on a given line. Today, I don't have figures to back this other than my straw poll with the 500 dealers I'm talking to thus far. It's actually about 45 to 50% at best as far as the efficiency goes. As a friend of mine says, it's like labor is like the food in the restaurant business. You sell it or smell it. If you don't sell that labor, it gets pretty staunch after a short period of time. If we're waiting for parts from our other vendors, the additional tools that are required, all of those things that cut down our efficiency in the service hurts that profit. We can get that up. Contribution to total sales is a guide of, or a measurement of, what am I doing in the service sales as a total percent of my parts and service, I should say, as a percent of my total business. And I challenge you to the fact that Mark Roswell made a comment in his opening remarks there the other day that you're going to see e-commerce as far as sales go. I think that that sales are going to continue to grow in your store. I know they are. A lot of that e-commerce is going through your website. In a seminar 2 weeks ago, one of the dealers sitting in there said, I just sold 2 425s over my web page. And the guy beside him says, yeah, but you had to give those away, didn't you? He says, no, I made better profit and the customer paid the freight on those than what I do in my own trade area. You people have the same thing. The website today for you is your front door. It's not the door you unlock anymore. The website is your front door out there, so you've got to be there with everything that you've got to sell in in parts, sales, and service, and don't confuse them by the number of vendors they've got to choose through. I'm saying here that your sales today is about 77%. Into the future, that's going to be 50 to 60%. I'm not cutting down the number of sales. Sales are going to continue to grow. If I could show you market share figures, Deere, your share of the market continues to grow in all areas. Continues to grow. But it's going to be a less total of your sales because what we're looking at is improving the parts sales and the service sales in your business. That has to be. If I gave you $10,000, Randy, to invest and said you can keep the half of the profits, here's 3 stores to look at. One has a 13% margin, one of a 34, and one of a 44. Where would you invest? You best invest in the one with the 44 or the 34, maybe half in each. That's where your parts and your service potential is. So today, unfortunately, in the parts business, the average is 13% of your total sales dollars are parts. 6.8%, unfortunately, are service. That's not acceptable. I got to focus on one line. I've got to focus on marketing, not just trying to wait for them to come in the door, marketing more parts and marketing more service. Let me show you an example. Forget about the sales aspect of it for just a second. If I've got 13% and 6.8 as my sales figures today, and if I moved to the margins that I've got, or if I stayed with the margins that I have today, and I simply moved my sales up 5% in parts and service, a simple 5% adds 40% to the bottom line. If you don't believe my math, go home and try it yourself. There's no smoking mirrors in this thing. It's factual business case analysis of what we need to do. That's the type of thing that we need to go and analyze our various vendors that we have carrying today. Are each of them profitable? I rather doubt that they are. I don't know if you in your trade area can get down to one. But you've got to look at a full vendor that makes the total package, because when I click on your website, I'm not interested in going to this part and to that part. If it's hard to do, if it doesn't have everything there that I'm looking for, I'm going to go on probably to the next page or to the next dealer to look at. Through our seminars, we are continuing to push ideas that help you market more parts, sales, and service. And one of the things we're working on, not only in fact or figure, but in electronic reality in the future, is the ability to put a total package sale together for the customer. In October of '98, we paid the tab for 100 commercial operators and purchasing agents from states and all over to come to Raleigh and tell us how to do business, how they wanted to have business done, I should say, in the future. They weren't there to say how big the mower should be or how many horsepower the tractor should have. But there was many things that were brought out, but one of the key things was, tell me, sir, if you can, talking to an individual. He says, tell me if you can help me put together my total cost of ownership of a piece of equipment. All I want to do is put the man on there and mow. I don't want to get involved in service. I wish I could show you a quote, but take my word for it. That's what he was asking for. So what I'm working on as a standpoint with our salespeople is take all of the assets of your business and put them together in a package, because the customer is interested in what's my cost per hour. And we're right today piloting the fact that the John Deere Finance Company, you see over there on the side, John Deere Finance Company will finance the whole package for us. Depending upon rules by state, but that's a big plus, because we can put this in one package. Well, what does that mean to the customer? The customer's got these needs that we have identified on this sale proposal. We put a picture in there of the different equipment that we're recommending to him. He told me, I want 1,000 hours of operation. I usually keep it for 5 years. And I have 5,300 to trade in. So we put the list of equipment that he's buying. We have in this process that we go through in the seminar, we have an evaluation of the trade-in, making it fair and to both parties. We have a 5-year preventive maintenance agreement, 5-year full warranty protection, 5-year physical damage insurance, and a 24-hour promise on our part for any scheduled service. It prints out the whole list of all the parts and the filters and everything that's going to be done every 250 hours to that tractor. And you know what? If you put in your $50 shop rate, whatever, you load that, it comes out to $1.59 an hour for maintenance on that tractor. If the man comes back and says, I don't want to have all that involved into it, I can say, well, sir, the way I've figured this thing here, it comes out to $2,320 per year that you would save by you doing the maintenance instead of us. And I don't think you can hire the people to do that. That's what they were asking us for, right? That's what you need to get into, and you can do it by hand. Don't wait for the electronic version to come along, but do it by hand. Go into your store tomorrow and put together a package deal for everything you've got on the floor, from the 5400 out front to the LX 133 or LT 133 sitting in your store. So when you come in to ask for what's this cost me per month, I get into the same situation that I'll show you in a minute on an LX 272 that I can tell you what that cost is. But let's back up for a second and say, what's in it for me? Don't we always say that? What's in it for me? In this case, if I sold the new tractor and just the used tractor, I would have approximately $19,000 in profits. Gross margin, not bottom line. And you're going to say, right, dummy, you don't get that type of margins out of it, do you? Well, if I came in with anything less than suggested list, you'd say, well, you're trying to get me to cut prices. No, no, no. Let's go over here and say unfortunately, what today's industry does. 12% on complete goods, 5% on used stuff. But you know something? Down here I added $5,100 to my gross margin dollars. Not bottom line, I still got to pay expenses. I actually had 25.9% more gross margin dollars in my kitty if I sold it at the full margins. But you said, no, you can't sell it that route. Well, now wait a minute. Don't we grease and change oil, etc., in the same tractor that we sold for 10% that we did for 30%? Every 250 hours, the engine doesn't care what it was paid for, right? So service goes on in that respect. And if I look at that, I've got now, instead of the 5.9, my actually gross margin dollars in the kitty are 77% more than I had. And I would caution you in your notebook, because I had a typo, me, in there that had an addition wrong, and that's a 130% figure. Don't ever get carried off with that one there. But 77% is a tremendous increase in what I've got for margins. In the homeowner situation, the same thing. Mary wants to buy an LX 277. In that case, I make the proposal to her. It's going to cost her $124 a month to have it fully maintained, because we have the ready to mow out there at the same recommended maintenance levels right at her doorstep. And we find out when we look at this case that it's quite an increase also to the bottom line, and about 42% gross margin. Now, if she doesn't want that, it actually works out to less than $20 per month. And your sales can say then, hey, is it worth it to have for less than $20 a month to have all the maintenance taken care of? You never worry about when it needs to be done. We take care of that from this professional store. So what you have to do, people, is to go home and analyze your vendors completely by line. Increase your financial strength and probably your profits if you get down to the ones which are the brand that you want to carry. And that decision has to be yours. But do it methodically through all of the lines. Because very honestly, if you divide the resources, you do get diluted results because of the various things we've talked about that add to that cost. Remember, that new front door you've got is not the one you unlock. It's what do I look like to the public out there, whether it be as they drive by or as they walk into your store. You're the professional. You are focused on the needs that that individual has. These are some of the objectives I'll cover here in just a second. But before I get to the close, I want to show you one more chart that I think is kind of powerful. If I in my store can say over the next 5 or 6 years, I grow at a minimum of 8% compounded. I'd take $1 million in sales to $1.5 million plus. I would take sales, and I'm going to say that the margin stays the same on that amount. But you notice we're 50% of total store sales here. We were 75 over here. If I raise my sales or my parts and service to the amounts recommended, that puts a powerful 136% more gross dollars in your pocket if we can manage in that direction. And again, I challenge you, I don't believe it can be done from experience of working with you. It can't be done by having every color on the rainbow on the lot. I don't want you to be this part up here that's not here. I want you to be part of that group that's down here that makes up that number in the year 2010. This is the chart or an example thereof that you need to make up at home so that I can analyze what I look like and then commit to that vendor. We've talked about today a lot of things, and somebody said this morning you're cramming a lot of stuff into a 45-minute period. But you know something? This business, as I said, has grown in a lot of cases from a ma and pa organization into a business that is just in some case, driving us nuts. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to chase every color of the rainbow. And it's going to pay you big, big, big dividends if you go home and do this physical checkup on all the vendors that you're presently thinking that I have to have. Because if you look at everything that we've talked about, from the financial strength of your business down to putting a package deal together, you need a resource that you can rely on, right? And I don't know as if you get that from all the lines that you're dealing with. I know pretty well what other manufacturers offer as far as flooring goes and things of that nature. Financing, some cases you got to go to a separate financing institution to get my flooring or get my retail finance. Not always can I offer a waiver of interest like you've got. All the things that come in that big stack of mail that you hate that's got the John Deere logo out there. Nobody that I know as a dealer loves that stack of mail. Well, it's getting smaller a little bit by the electronic mail. But in that package, people, there is something about the total width of everything that you need to effectively and profitably run your business. The line of equipment that your customer is looking for is, maybe it's Deere, maybe it's not. But I'll guarantee you flatly, and in talking to the customers myself, they are looking for a total professional business. Not too long ago, the ag dealers had an analysis that they made, and you're well aware of customer satisfaction. The upper 20% of the dealers that had loyal John Deere customers also had a 3.5% better gross margin overall in their store, other than the guys at the bottom of the stack, which you might think had to give it away to get that loyalty. It isn't so. Be the professional, because from one source, over 162 years of longevity, I believe you're going to choose Deere. I thank you for your time, because the best way to predict your future is to change it and create it yourself. And I'd offer you a greeting of happy holidays and profits in the millennium. Thank you.